anytime you have a fundamental shift in how something's done, you have risks as well as rewards. So what I wanted to focus on briefly are three areas where I think we need to worry about risk mitigation as we move to the cloud. The first one is a positive risk, if you will, because it has opportunity rather than something to be protected against. Once you change to a new platform, you have a new opportunity to break up all of the oligarchies, if you will, that are in the marketplace. So we're at a point in time where either existing or new very large companies can take control of the cloud, or primarily through standards, we can create a cloud-based environment that opens up competition and decreases the likelihood of lock-in. So the first one is the briefest and the simplest one, which is don't let the opportunity pass us by. We've all seen too often since the dawn of the computer age that there tends to be consolidation. There tends to be rare opportunities when someone can grab a hold of the operating system and what flows from that. So this is a time when we can look at it, we can think about it, we can try and figure out how to do it in such a way that this doesn't have to happen again. It doesn't mean, I don't think, that you're not going to end up with some very large players with a very large percentage of the marketplace. But you can have portability, and with portability you can have competition, and you can also have small clouds as well as large clouds. So it's not a winner-take-all. There will be a multi-tiered situation with multiple types of cloud settings. And I think our challenge is to try and maintain competition and therefore innovation all the way through this cloud cycle for as long as it lasts. The second thing I wanted to talk about has to do with the personal cloud. About 6 or 7 years ago, I posited the existence of something that I called the personal data sphere. Back then, people were still keeping or just giving up keeping documents in file cabinets, literal physical file cabinets. Pictures were on film. Music was on fixed media. And today, of course, nobody does any of that anymore. You know, a piece of paper is a temporary reference which then gets shredded. So when you think about where everything you are today is, it's somewhere out there, you know, picking up on what Michael was saying. This will get to be more and more important for a number of reasons. First of all, your data is going to more and more define you. And there's value in there. You now have the prospect of electronic health records and the values that can come from that. But then the question is, who can see them, who can find them, and can you find them when you want them? Who do you want to give permission to see them? This will continue as data becomes richer, for example, with personal genomes. You will want to know what the health information of your parents were, just as your children and grandchildren may want to know what the health information that you have. So what I envisioned was this concept of a personal data sphere, which literally was everything that you had need for, everything that defined you, everything that the external world would refer you into. Well, right now, it's owned by Google, it's owned by Facebook, et cetera. One of the reasons it is that way is, from the standards perspective, is vendors are the people that have the primary incentive to create standards. So you have the standards, and you have the tools, and you have the access that vendors think are not only useful to you, but also economically favorable to them. So what I think we should be thinking about is, what should a personal data sphere, a personal cloud be like? And what attributes should go along with that? Well, I think first and foremost, portability. It's something that begins forming around you before you're born. It's something that should exist after you die. It ought to be portable. It ought to be redundantly backed up. It ought to be secure. That will only happen if it's conceived from the inside out, not from the outside in. So I would challenge you to think, what should a personal data sphere be like? And how should that be productized in the marketplace? If you set that as a goal, there would be a lot of vendors who could say, I'd love to provide that. And you could come up with the standards that would enable that and that would also ensure portability. I think that everyone in this room has a vested interest in hoping that that will come into being. I don't know anyone who's talking about it really right now. They're only doing it in discrete ways, electronic health records or Facebook or so on. So let's try and think about how to do a personal data sphere what other attributes it should have, what permissions should be able, how easily are them, can it be certified, make sure that all the controls are the same so that the individual only has to learn one set of rules for everything. Let's make sure that it's federated identity. You only need one password. I don't have to belabor because I think it's kind of intuitively obvious how important and how useful this would be. The last thing I wanted to focus on is a little bit more grim. Actually, it has a very simple solution, but it's only a simple solution if people think about it in time to do it. Michael mentioned how data centers are going to cluster around hubs and how they're going to take climate into account in placing. Right now, we see in developed countries as much as 10% of all electricity generated going to run data centers. Just the first time you hear it, it's just an astonishing number. Well, this naturally is only going to increase, and it's going to increase on a global basis because the same numbers will be replicated, except even more disproportionately in other countries. So this will drive consolidation of another sort. You'll also see these data centers migrating not only to fiber hubs, but also to lowest cost of electricity sources. You're also going to see, for global warming concerns, driving down your carbon footprint. So they're also going to be the places, they'll be around wind farms where your footprint will be less. So what you can envision in the future is that they'll also become commoditized. The big players will have the huge disproportion of the amount. So even these smaller clouds might just be subcontracting up, to the Amazons of the world. So what I think it's almost certain you'll see, like even the federal US government is driving the agencies to have fewer data centers, not more. Well, think what happens when you have fewer and fewer and fewer in fewer and fewer places. Now imagine the world 10 years from now where 90% of the software, the data, remember we have no more paper, human knowledge. Whether you're Intel and all of your designs, whether you're the EU and its records, whether you're your electronic health records, whether you're talking about anything, and you're talking about everything, is now living in these big metal buildings, especially in a cold climate, you might as well, why insulate it? These big open metal buildings in enormous, multi-square mile areas clustered in a few locations, okay? There's something we used to have around here called war. And one of the problems that we all have is we tend to think in a very narrow historical slice in time, a few years back, a few years forward. We're not really thinking about this consolidation, geographic consolidation of data, but it will happen. I mean, I don't think once you hear about it, you think about it and say, well, of course it's going to happen. There will be wars again. It's a sad truth, but there will be wars again. And all of these data centers are going to be sitting out there ready to annihilate or be annihilated the power system, the financial system, the transportation system. There isn't a system now, let alone in 10 years, that does not go down if the internet goes down. The fuel doesn't get delivered. The cars don't run. The planes don't take off. It goes on and on. Now, if you think that we still have a lot of time to worry about this, if you go to my blog, it's called the Standards blog at consortiuminfo.org, you can read a scenario in greater detail that goes like this. 10 years from now, 10 ships, container ships, near Los Angeles, Seattle, New York. One's coming up the English Channel, one's already in the Baltic, one's in the Western Mediterranean, one's in the Eastern Mediterranean. And 2 hours before dawn, the doors and the bows of the ships open. They're about a mile offshore. And at 30-second intervals, drone after drone after drone after drone takes off a couple of 100 feet above the ground. Every single one of those drones hits its target. Because nowhere in the United States and nowhere in Europe are there any defenses, zero, to go against it. If you think it sounds outlandish, in 1940s they had something called buzz bombs. This is old technology. It's been refined, but it's been around for 70 years. And naturally, the targets are the data centers. And what you would have would be, within a week, mass starvation, and you can take it from there. You would probably see there's 800 million people between the United States and Europe. You would probably see, if this came in January, half of them dead by spring. If you think about it, there's not a single thing in that scenario I went through that isn't today's technology. It's even trivial cost. You know, there's any number of countries, not to mention the obvious ones, North Korea and Iran, that would have the motivation, if they wanted to do just exactly what I said. And there would be no technical barrier to them to do so. Now, the good news is there is an obvious thing to do. Put them 50 feet underground. But it's an illustration of the fact that we always like to think about the candy and worry about the cavities later. Everyone is focusing now on cybersecurity. No one's thought anything about physical security. So I'll stop there, but I think the lesson is this is a wonderful direction that we're headed in, but it takes some pre-thinking. It's not the kind of pre-thinking that industry is going to do on its own because they've got that 3, 4, 5 year horizon. But it's very much what government should be doing in pre-thinking what are the things that should happen in order to make this a good thing for everybody.